Hey guys, what's up? Unrested here, and today we're actually at a tattoo shop here in Kitahorie, Osaka, and that is Chopsticks. And we're here to interview one of the only gaijin tattoo artists in all of Osaka. So we're going to go ahead and take a step in now and see what he has to say about the history and all the meanings behind tattoos in Japan and pretty much what it takes to be a tattoo artist here. Okay, so I guess what I'd want to just start with is, you know, what was your reason for coming to Japan? Like, everybody's going to ask you that to begin with anyway.
Oh, my reason for coming to Japan? Well, I used to be a little bit embarrassed about it, so I used to kind of lie about it. But I suppose I'll just tell you. Before there was a gigantor, like, boom in Japanese culture in the West, you know, with sort of animation and movies and manga and whatnot. There was like this little underground subculture circle that would like trade fourth generation videotapes of science fiction shows and things like, you know, Ultraman and you know, Mazinger's that. And this is, I think it was about 1988 or 1989 when I first saw the movie Akira. I was a little kid, man.
Yeah, what, like 11 about?
I was 11 or 12, yeah. I was really young, and I was really like stoked on this film because up until that time, you know, I'd never seen anything.
Right, definitely.
Anything like it. And so this was, you know, mature thieves, violence, blood.
Yeah, you'd get your parents to rent it at Blockbuster.
Yeah. Anyway, I saw this at a friend of a friend's house, and I was just blown away. It was, you know, the video was all blurry and shit. But I saw it and I thought, wow, man, like, I couldn't believe the dedication that it took to produce that movie. You know, to make a lot of the explosions in that movie, I learned like years later in life, they would actually build little model cities and blow them up and videotape themselves blowing up model cities and then like trace over each of like the frames. That's how they got a lot of those realistic effects. They didn't have computers and shit back then, and I knew at that time that whatever country was capable of making like animation and art of that quality, I knew I wanted to go there.
So when you got to Japan, what started to inspire you to become a tattoo artist?
The biggest thing that inspired me is when I got here, you know, like I said, I was an English teacher because that's the easiest job.
Right, of course.
That you can get right off when you're fresh off the boat, right? So, of course, you know, when you're first an English teacher, right, everybody just, you get to pick a city and everyone writes down, oh, I want to be in Tokyo or Osaka, because that's the only cities they know. Maybe they know Hiroshima from their history books, but that's about it. Right. So they send me way down to the country because they figure I can speak Japanese because I've got this Japanese university degree, which is totally useless. So they sent me way down to the country, and I'm teaching down there, and it's really fun. But you know, you're a young guy, you're early 20s. There's nothing but potato farms everywhere, and you know.
So you're an Inaka to start out.
I'm totally an Inaka, man. Yeah, this is not like Akira, you know, at all. This is like old Obachans farming their Satsuma Imo potatoes and all the rest of it. So it was cool though, man. It was an awesome 2 years of my life, and I loved it. You know, I was spending a lot of time going up to cities like Fukuoka, to Kagoshima City, to Osaka City, Kumamoto, you know, mostly in Kyushu, but I would go as far as Hiroshima and Osaka, you know, especially because I had friends and stuff up here, and so we'd come up here and we'd hang out, and then I was constantly hanging out at these tattoo shops, right, and then one day a friend of mine, Doug Hardy, an old friend from back in the States, he's the guy whose shop was in my neighborhood, or the shop he was working at was in my neighborhood, and that was where some of these Japanese guests had been coming. So he came over to Japan to kind of go to some different shops and do like a kind of a 2-week tour, and he was staying at a place. He was working for a long period of time at a studio called Tommy's Fire in Hiroshima, which is run by my old friend Hidero, who unfortunately passed away this past April. But when I took a bunch of time off, and I was just hanging out with this guy. I went up to Hidero. We went up to here to Chopstick Tattoo in Osaka. And we went down to Hidero's studio in Hiroshima, and it was that sort of week and a half that I spent just hanging out in the studio constantly, seeing people get tattooed, drawing and painting with these guys, seeing their dedication. That dedication that I recognized in my early exposure to Japanese art, right? Like looking at their art, their animation, their comics, and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then seeing that in like a tattoo center, their commitment was unbelievable. It was really, that was like a really profound moment in my life. You know. Do you want to know about trials and tribulations?
Yeah. Give us the dirty.
Well, sometimes these things tend to turn into bitch sessions. I don't want that to happen. But I'll be honest with you. I get that question a lot sometimes. Yeah. Like, can I tattoo in Japan? Can I study the tattooing the ink and the putting in the skin of Japan? And it's like, I didn't know what I was asking at the time. I was really naive. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what I was in for at all. But I was young and foolish and stubborn, which I guess at the time probably worked to my advantage. Actually, I wasn't that young. I should have started when I was younger. But anyway. The first thing is like getting your foot in the door, because it's like, do you speak Japanese? No? Okay, well, forget it, you know. Well, I spoke Japanese, albeit not complete Japanese. It was probably better than a university student, but that's still not like totally fluent. Plus, you know, I was in Osaka at this point, and anyone who knows anything about Japanese culture knows that Osakans speak a language that kind of resembles Japanese, but it's Osaka Japanese. It's a little bit different, and I wasn't used to that. Mm-hmm. So first I had to convince them, you know, that I was okay to work here. So I mean, I was showing up every day, and then I was like, look, my contract's over in a couple more months, and then when it's over, I'm just going to move up here, you know, and I want to start in there. And they were like, they finally sent me that. I'm like, okay, you know, let's just see how this goes. So I get in there, and I do my first day, and they're just showing me around the shop, you know, the other girls there's some like shop girls that are there, who eventually were sent to other shops or dismissed because, you know, now they have apprentices to do that. So I was just getting my feet wet the first couple days, and you know, fucking the shop's about to close at about 9 o'clock, and everyone's kind of sweeping up, and I'm sweeping up, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna go. And they're like, what do you mean you're going? They're like, I'm like, well, the shop's closed, right? I mean, everyone else is going home. I want to go home. And they're like, what the hell are you thinking that you're going home? Like, that was kind of when, you know, you feel a little bit of that bomb drop. You know, sometimes in the West, we have this idea that the teachers and friends, those borders can overlap. You can be friends with your teachers. Right. That's not totally inconceivable, even if you respect them as teachers. But we really don't have that senpai-kohai thing like they do in Japan, the upper and lower classmen, the subordinate, the junior, the senior. Like, we really, not really, beyond college hazing anyway. Right. So, there was this immediate change from these guys who've been my friends for years are all of a sudden, you know, all of a sudden they're my teachers, you know. And this is before, I'm not even an apprentice at this stage. They still call, this is what's called a kenshusei. You're still like a prospect. In a way. I don't really know. It doesn't translate into English, but that's what you are. And so you're still like at that little mini student level. And so I was like, so I'm working hard, so I'm working late. I eventually get to about 11:30, and there was another girl at the time who was studying there. And there was another guy who had been studying. He just made his professional debut like that week. And so I was like, oh, when do I get a day off? Like Saturdays and Sundays are off, right? And they're like, there's no days off, you know? But at this point, these were things I hadn't even thought to ask. You know, I was so mesmerized by the magic and mystery of art and tattoos.
Did you still think it was an 8-hour workday at that point?
Oh yeah, man! I thought it was 8 hours. I thought it was 9 to 5. You know, when I had been around these guys before, the thing was I hadn't been sticking around for the cleaning up and the work part. I was only hanging out with them when it was, oh, they're done working, let's go out for dinner. You know, I wasn't going home with these guys and realizing that they were like drawing huge. I just assumed they were like me, and they drew all the time, and that was just that. And so I didn't understand any of those things, and so that was why I mean, if I had known that there was like no days off, including Christmas, your birthday, New Year's, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Ramadan, and all the rest of it, I probably wouldn't have done it if I had known the hours were gonna. So, but you know, but I'd started. You know, I'd already started. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna give up. You know, and I was on the hook when I was gonna start. You know, well, you can see parts of it now, but I was starting a whole Japanese bodysuit, right? And I had to pay for that. That wasn't like, a lot of people ask, oh, did they tattoo that for free? It's like, who's going to give you 50 plus free tattoo sessions? This thing took me 4 years to finish. Well, anyway, so I was starting to get tattooed. I was working, I was around tattooing constantly. So that was just the start, man. But after that, I mean, they raise you up really hard here. It's a very Spartan system. So, you know, in the West, we might think, oh, it's, especially in this day and age when kids are so sensitive and soft and emo-y, you know, I edit that out. There's nothing wrong with emo. Nothing. But, you know, there's this whole, I mean, you know, they'd knock you around a little bit here.
Right.
You know, they'd throw you down steps, they'd beat you up.
For like making errors and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, if you screw something up, it depends how bad you screw up. And sometimes it would depend on a person's mood. Yeah. Certain, like getting yelled at, a lot of it's real psychological too, yeah, which isn't really different from any other shop. But you know, I had heard about apprenticeships being tough in the West, and it would be, you know, I'd hear things like, and then he made me mow his lawn this one time. You know, you do stuff like that. You're like, oh, gee, that's real terrible. You know, I mean.
So it was kind of just see if you would break, like to see if you would give in.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, they throw you off the cliff and see if you climb back up. And my cliff was, you know, a lot taller than others, and not boo-hoo, poor me. But that was circumstantial. I mean, you know, I'm a foreigner living in Japan, and I didn't have any. I was living in the country before I even came to Osaka, so I know Osaka's support network. I had no friends in the foreigner community here. I know family here, of course. So anybody else who's having a rough time as an apprentice here, at least they have a home they can go back to, parents that can beg for money. You know, I had none of that. So at a certain point, all that money I'd saved up from my fat teaching bucks, that ran out because I was pouring it all into this full body tattoo. You know, with this, oh, I'll be tattooing in 6 months, and then I'll be making all this money, and you know.
So essentially, you were eventually living like with no money, no job, nothing to your name.
Yeah, because there was no time to get a part-time job or do any kind of work like that, and there was no money, and then there was no food, and then there was nowhere to live.
So you were like squatting or homeless?
I was both of those things. Well, first I was homeless. That was kind of scary, and so I would just, you know, I was working in the shop all the time anyway, so I would just like fall asleep on the drawing desk in the shop, because the only time you had to draw was at night. I had to draw, because that was the only thing that kept me going. So I'd be sitting there and I'd fall asleep, I'd wake up in the morning, and then they'd be coming like, yo, did you sleep here last night? I'd be like, I just fell asleep on the desk, and they were like, what the fuck, man, it's going to smell like dirty ape, dirty human in the morning, man. We got customers coming in, this is no fucking pad. You know, when you're done, get the fuck out of here, don't stink the place. I mean, that, you know, that's how they were, and then I was like, oh shit, what am I going to do? And at the time I thought, oh, they're so compassionate, they're so terrible. But, you know, that was, hey man, you know, the shop isn't there for the apprentices.
Right.
You know, the shop is just there for the shop, and if you want to be part of it, you got to prove yourself. And so then it was homelessness, and that was a little bit rough, because I'd never been homeless before. I'd had tough times and good times and bad times, and times of high pay and low pay throughout my life at that stage, but I had never been, like, homeless, and so,
let alone homeless in a foreign country.
Yeah, you know, and this is all. So the first thing was, I mean, I'd spent a lot of time running errands for these guys all over the city, so there was a lot of like, I knew where there were places. I mean, there were stairwells and air conditioning units on top of buildings. The city's actually full of places for you to sleep. And I made friends with a lot of the homeless people, actually, and they taught you all sorts of tricks for surviving. You'd be surprised, the Japanese homeless, without going into a big long thing, are very different from the homeless in the West. They never talk to people. They never ask for money. They never ask for money.
Right.
They'll do little odd jobs, or they just know like when this kind of food is getting thrown out before it gets bad, and you can catch it before it hits the dumpster. I mean, you know, so actually it wasn't so bad, but you know, if I could like find a 100 yen coin on the ground, you know, I'd go to the 99 yen shop and I'd buy like a box of crackers and then I'd like take out one cracker. I'd ration them out. So okay, like these 3 crackers, these are for today, and these 3 crackers are for tomorrow. And then I'd get, I'd be like drawing. I'd be so hungry, my stomach was growling so loud. So I'd eat like a 4th cracker, then I'd like fucking break down and cry because I'd like, oh my god, that was like tomorrow. I ate into tomorrow's food supply. Like, yeah, it was. I mean, that was, But people, there were people outside the shop who eventually, if you're working that hard. Everyone loves an underdog, right? Everyone loves cheering for like the underdog. I mean, we see it so often, and there were a lot of people who started really pitching in. Man, one guy, he's like, hey, my parents are from this farm. They're not really overt about it. And this guy was like, hey, I got this old rice cooker. I don't think, I don't even know if it works. Oh, my parents work on this farm for some rice. And he gave this big fat bag of rice. All of a sudden, I had rice, man. And a rice cooker, and you can plug it. There's outlets everywhere.
Right.
So I would plug this thing in. I would, borrow water from the shop, and then I would like cook rice, and it was like I actually had some food. But at that time, I got really skinny. I mean, my ribs, you wouldn't, think of it to look at me now, but my ribs were poking through my side. I started to get blotches on my skin. It was kind of Graveyard of the Fireflies kind of stuff. They used to joke, they used to call me Setsuko. If you've ever seen that movie,
right.
Then you know what that's referring to. But, you get past it. I mean, that's why, I can laugh about it now.
Yeah, now you can.
Yeah, now. So long ago. But, yeah, that was a little rough.
I imagine.
It made me appreciate food, that's for sure. My name is Ben. I'm a tattoo artist in Osaka, Japan, at Chopstick Tattoo. I came here to study about 8 years ago, and I made my professional debut as a professional tattoo artist about 3.5 years ago. I take custom orders. I'm open to consultation anytime. And until next time, be well, do good work, and keep in touch.